Morning. My camera was a little crooked. Doesn't matter too much, but today we look at Ezekiel 30 through 34. It's a lot of chapters, a lot of pages in the Bible, and much of it again is, it's Ezekiel getting the word of the Lord, and I enjoy kind of the way it's written. The word of the Lord came to me, mortal. God is reminding Ezekiel that he is mortal, that he is, that God is infinite, but that Ezekiel is here on this earth just for a short time. And it's a reminder that each and every one of us is here for, a relatively short time. And as God tells Ezekiel, as God instructs Ezekiel as to what to say to the different peoples, to the kings, to the nations, it's a reminder that everything in the world is temporary. And Egypt was a mighty power, and it had been for many years, and it had many allies. And chapter 30 is, God says to Ezekiel, prophesy more against Egypt. And there's already been, the last chapter especially was, against Egypt. But, verse 4, a sword shall come upon Egypt, and anguish will be in Ethiopia, and then Ethiopia and Put and Lud and all of Arabia and Libya, all of Egypt's allies, all of their mercenaries, all of the lands that they are in control of will be defeated, and the people will be dispersed by this nation, Babylon. And God doesn't think too much of the nation of Babylon. In verse 11, he's talking about Babylon. He said, he and his people with him, the most terrible of the nations. And those words are again used a little bit later for Babylon. The most terrible of nations. The most despicable, the most, undesirable. But yet, God is going to use the Babylonians and King Nebuchadnezzar to, basically teach a lesson, to show the people that he is God, and that they need to follow and listen to God. God says in verse 15, I will pour out my wrath upon Pelusium, the stronghold of Egypt, and cut off, and he mentions many towns, many cities, as well as, having mentioned those other nations, lands as well, that they were going to be run over, conquered by the Babylonians. And then chapter 20, now we go back to the 11th year in the first month. In the other chapter, it was started out in the 11th year, and then it kind of toward the end jumped ahead to the 27th year. But, now we're back at the 11th year, first month, 7th day of the month, and he says, I've broken the arm of Pharaoh. And not only that, but he says, I will break his good arm as well as his broken arm. So Pharaoh is going to become helpless. If you got two broken arms, you can't, hold a sword. You can't feed yourself. There's an awful lot of things you can't do. And this is what's going to happen to Pharaoh. He's going to become helpless, and he will be destroyed. His nation will be destroyed by others. And then chapter 31 starts in the 11th year on the 3rd month. So just a couple months later than the first speaking. And again, mortal, say to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and to his hordes, who are you in your greatness? And, you think so much of yourself. And I like verse 10. It says, therefore says the Lord, because it towered high and set its top among the clouds, and its heart was proud of its height, I gave it to the hand of the prince. Its heart was proud of its height. It was full of itself. It was thinking, man, I'm the greatest, and it's, and there is none other, none better. And I think of people that have said that about themselves, and Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay was a great boxer, and he professed himself to be the greatest, but it turned out that someone did in time beat him, and but it's here, God is saying, don't get filled with pride, don't build yourself up, don't pat yourself on the back too much, because you are only there because of so many other people, so many other things that have gone on in your life. And, in verse 12 here again of chapter 31, it says, foreigners from the most terrible of all nations. So he's talking again to the people of Egypt, to Pharaoh especially, that this most horrible nation, Babylon, and the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, will come and destroy him. And it says, on his fallen trunk will settle all of the birds of the air, and on his, and so this mighty tree that was so proud of itself, this great nation of Egypt, is going to fall. And it will be, like a tree laying waste, and, animals building their nest in it, and birds resting upon it, and, it won't be anything special other than, dead wood laying there on the ground. Egypt will be destroyed and gone. And then chapter 32 is in the 12th year, the 12th month, on the first day. So, we've gone from the 11th year, 1 month, 11th year, 3 months. Now we're 12th year, 12 months. So, and it's going to bounce back and forth because this isn't written, we already were at the 27th year. It isn't written 100% chronologically. And, you think about when you tell your story, the story of your life. I mean, you might speak a little bit of when you were, 5 or 6, and then of a teenager, and then as later, and then back and forth. I mean, our stories get blended. And this is what happens with much of the Bible. And they get blended, and they get, it's just like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. All tell the story of Jesus. And some of the sayings of Jesus are in one place in one and one place in the other, in Luke. And we tell the stories in different ways. And that's why it's so important for us to tell the truth, because the truth is always true. And we don't have to remember, well, say, what did I tell so-and-so? I mean, and so the story of the Bible isn't 100% in order. And it's just like we don't start at Genesis and read through Revelation, and it's one chapter after another is exact timing in history. It's not that at all. But anyway, on the 12th month, the 12th year, the day of the word again comes, mortal. And again, that word just reminds me that, of our timeliness here on this earth, and of the limited time that we will be on this earth. And it says, you'll make a lamentation over Pharaoh and say to him, so Pharaoh was full. You think of yourself as a lion among the nations, and you think of yourself as great and mighty, but then you're just thrashing about in the sea. You're really nothing. And so the whole of, most of chapter 32 then is a lamentation, a mourning over Israel, over Egypt, and the destruction that will come there. One of the hit titles in the page of my Bible says it's a dirge over Egypt, and so they're hard words to hear, but words that remind us, that life on this earth, will end. It's not infinite, but it has an ending, as do, I hate to ever think of it, but that, the United States, at some point in time, there's a possibility that it could cease to exist. Think of Britain and the British Empire. You think of, so many different empires that have been, from the very beginning in the Bible, we had so many different empires. But hopefully, this nation that we live in will be able to stand firm and strong for, many, many more centuries. Chapter 33, the word comes that says, speak to your people. So these words are, designated a little bit more to the restoration of Israel. God is saying, I will be their shepherd. I will gather them. I will, you shepherds. And there's, nasty or harsh words toward the shepherds, especially in chapter 34 of, you shepherds are leading the people astray. You're not taking care of the sick. You're not taking care of the needy. You're not, and then also compares some to fat sheep and some to weak sheep, skinny sheep, that the fat sheep are eating all the grass and then they're trampling it down. You know, they're not caring for each other. They're not, you know, they're taking care of themselves, and, you know, the next guy along, well, he's on his own, rather than looking out for one another. And I don't have a lot, you know, underlined in Ezekiel from previous readings, but I have most of verse 24. Abraham was only one man, yet he got possession of the land. But we are many. The land is surely given to us to possess. This is what the people are saying, you know. But the reality is that God says, you people are, you're not taking care of each other. And, you know, if you read on through the rest of that paragraph, it's, you know, that they're really not going to get exactly what they think. You know, it says that the mountains of Israel shall be so desolate that no one will pass through, and then they will know that I am the Lord. So it's, even though the people remember their ancestor Abraham, and it's just like Jesus says, you know, I could raise up from these rocks people with faith, you know. Don't count on Abraham as your ancestor. And then the last thing I want to share today is in verse 31, where God says, they will hear your words, they will not obey them, for flattery is on their lips, but their heart is set on gain. They're paying lip service to God. And God knows that. And we have so many people in the world today that do that very same thing. You know, pay lip service to God, pay lip service to our country. And we need to have a firm commitment and a firm and strong belief that God is active in our world, and that we can fully rely on God.